Tonight, I want to talk about the history of fish oil, the past, the present, and more importantly, the future. First of all, fish oil is not new. Our first recorded use of fish oil was over 3,000 years ago with the Phoenicians using some type of fish sauce to basically flavor their foods, but really as a pharmaceutical. That early use of fish oil was refined by the ancient Romans. They developed something called garum. So, what exactly is garum? Well, garum is the fermented intestines from sardines and mackerel. And what you do, remove the intestines from the fish, and then you let them ferment in large vats for over a year. And what happens is the oil rises to the top. Fish oil, 2,000 years ago in Rome, was considered the most important pharmaceutical they had. And that's why there were massive garum factories all throughout the Mediterranean. But with the fall of the Roman Empire, the recipe for garum was lost. Now let's fast forward about 2,000 years. Now, basically, this is the next development of fish oil. It was known as English cod liver oil. Cod livers are a very, very rich source of omega-3 fatty acids. Cod livers contain about 20% of their liver weight or fat in the liver as EPA and DHA. Now, there weren't that many cod livers off England, but there are lots of cod livers and cod off the coast of New England. And so the New England cod liver in transport from New England to England started around the area of the American Revolution. The cod livers were brought from New England to England, and then they were fermented in wooden vats for about a year, very similar to how they treated fish intestines in Roman times. However, now this drug, which I called cod liver oil, was considered a wonder drug for the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis. The first report of this type of English cod liver oil to treat rheumatoid arthritis, an autoimmune disease, was found in the 1786 Transactions of the Royal Academy of Medicine. The next major breakthrough in fish oil was called Norwegian cod liver oil. This was developed about 1850. What they now took is ground fish cod livers and added some water to them and continually agitated the mixture. And as the oil was being released from the cod liver, it would rise to the top of the vats and skimmed off. And this was Norwegian cod liver oil. This was a type of fish oil that was the primary use of fish oil for the next nearly 130 years. Now, during that time period, that first 130 years, virtually no child in America, and this is also true of most of Europe, could leave the house before they had a tablespoon of cod liver oil. Actually, one of the more disgusting foods known to mankind, but it was used really as a treatment for rickets because it is rich in vitamin D, but it is also rich in omega-3 fatty acids. The next major breakthrough in fish oil production was a product known as Max EPA. This appeared in the 1980s. It was a slightly purified preparation of anchovy or sardine oil. It contained about 30% of the total weight of the oil were now omega-3 fatty acids consisting of EPA and DHA. However, the quality of Max EPA was not all that better than cod liver oil. So, not surprisingly, sales of Max EPA were not that great. Then something happened in the year 2000. This is a graph taken from the Washington Post showing what happened in terms of fish oil sales in America starting in about 2002 to 2014. And as you can see, there was something that caused a dramatic increase of fish oil sales, nearly a tenfold increase in a decade. So the question is, what may have caused that? No one knows for sure, but there are some good guesses. And one guess was the publication of my book at the same time. It was called The Omega RX Zone, subtitled The Miracle of the New High-Dose Fish Oil. That laid the theoretical foundation of a new generation of fish oil and all the things it can do if you took adequate levels of this basically new high-dose fish oil. And this basically started the history of Omega RX. Omega RX was originally a joint venture between my company, Zone Labs, and the pharmaceutical giant Roche. Basically, we are working together basically develop a new higher potency fish oil, not the 30% of omega-3 fatty acids as found in Maxipa, but a doubling to 60% of EPA and DHA. But more importantly, we developed new technologies to lower the levels of polychlorinated biphenyls. These are known neurotoxins. And therefore, for the first time, you not only had a high potency fish oil, but one that's really suitable for long-term human consumption. Well, Omega RX was introduced in 2002. Remember that graph I showed you from the Washington Post? Somehow there was an exponential rise in fish oil sales. I think it was because the combination of basically having now the availability of Omega RX coupled with my book gave the theoretical foundation of why you need high levels of fish oil. This was the first high-potency fish oil on the market, containing 60% EPA and DHA. It was also the first fish oil on the market that contained relatively low levels of PCBs, less than 25 parts per billion, nearly 4 times lower than the international standards. In 2016, we introduced the second generation of Omega RX. Now we could basically have even lower levels of PCBs in the final product. And this year, we introduced the third generation. Still the same low levels of PCBs, but now refined by a new technology, which I'll discuss tonight, called supercritical fluid technology, or SCF. This now gives rise to a more biologically active product than the standard fish oils in the previous decade. And this is what we're talking about, the future of fish oil, the third generation of Omega RX refined by supercritical fluid technology. So what exactly is this supercritical fluid technology and why is it so good? Well, all fish oil up to a certain point basically uses the same techniques for refining and concentrating. But in that concentration process, you basically generate a lot of adverse materials. There's only 2 ways to remove these. One is an old technology called molecular distillation. Molecular distillation heats up all the fish oil to a very high temperature, and basically the desired fatty acids rise to the top and are taken off. This is no different than refining crude oil to make gasoline. You take the crude oil, you put it in a heater, you heat it up, and the gasoline basically rises to the top and you take it off. What's left behind is gunk, also known as asphalt, the things you basically put on tops of road surfaces. But to heat the omega-3 fatty acids high enough so they can basically be separated from the asphalt, they're exposed to very high temperatures, about 190 degrees centigrade. And at those temperatures, some very adverse problems happen to the fish oil. Now, supercritical fluid technology is totally different. It does not heat the fish oil up to high temperatures, but what it does, it takes the concentrated fish oil and dissolves the fish oil in a high pressure mixture of carbon dioxide, the gas that surrounds us on our daily life. But once you basically, at this high pressure, carbon dioxide becomes like a solvent. And now the fish oils dissolve in the solvent and they can rise to the surface and be separated from the asphalt at the bottom of the tank. The power of this technology is that you're using a much lower temperature at only about 40 degrees centigrade. And anybody who's ever cooked with cooking oils knows what happens when they basically heat up to high temperature. The answer is bad things. But in terms of omega-3 fatty acids, the bad things are called isomerization. You are changing now the configuration of the omega-3 fatty acids in space so they are turned from nutrients into anti-nutrients. What are anti-nutrients? They are omega-3 fatty acids that have a different configuration that can bind and inhibit the enzymes required to convert them to their more active forms, or prevent their binding to the receptors that give rise to all their benefits. So what supercritical fluid technology does, by basically now dissolving the fish oil at much lower temperature and separating it from the gunk left at the bottom of the tank, is basically you have less isomerization, and this makes now the fatty acids more biologically active. And that's the reason why you take omega-3 fatty acids. It's their biological activity to make incredibly powerful hormones that shut down inflammation. If you have high anti-nutrients in those omega-3 fatty acids, as you do from molecular distillation, the medical benefits are highly attenuated. That's why supercritical fluids technology is such a radical breakthrough in terms of using omega-3 fatty acids for nutritional and medical uses. And here are some more differences between molecular distillation and supercritical fluid extraction. One I've mentioned already is the temperature. Much lower temperature, which means less isomerization, which means less anti-nutrients. Yes, you can get to higher concentrations with supercritical fluids. However, there's a cost. What you're looking for is the maximum cost-benefit ratio, and that occurs around 60% of the omega-3 fatty acids. Now, the benefits of molecular distillation, the cost is very low because there's not much technology involved in heating up fish oil. However, the capital investment for supercritical fluid is high, and therefore the cost of refining is high, but the benefits of that extra cost are manifold. Why? Because it's the biological activity that you're looking for that gives omega-3 fatty acids their powerful tool in terms of maintaining wellness as well as treating disease. And finally, in terms of fatty acid oxidation and isomerization, what you have now is a situation where it's low in molecular distillation, but in supercritical fluid, it is very low. And that very low oxidation and isomerization is why fatty acids or omega-3 fatty acids refined by supercritical fluid technology are more biologically active. So what does a supercritical fluid plant look like? Well, it looks like more of a high-tech chemical processing plant, which it is. All that equipment you're seeing outside is the equipment required to compress carbon dioxide to exceptionally high pressures where it now turns into a liquid that basically can now dissolve the omega-3 fatty acids and remove them from the gunk at the bottom of the tank. And that it does cost, but the end product is well worth the cost in terms of improved biological performance. And that's why you take omega-3 fatty acids in the first place. If they are not reducing inflammation, there's no need to take them. But they do if they have the right configuration. And reducing inflammation is one of the keys to treating every chronic disease state known to medical science. So how do you know if the fish oil you're taking has been refined by supercritical fluid technology? Well, you have to look at the bottle. And if you're in Mexico, this is what you look for. On the upper left-hand corner, it says refined by supercritical fluid technology. That's your indication that what's inside those capsules is more biologically active. And what does that mean for your body? Better performance because you're having lower levels of inflammation. But even with that, there are certain fish oil basics you have to be aware of, and they fall into three categories: the purity, the daily intake, and the personalization, because we're all genetically different. So let me look at each of these independently in more detail. Let's look at purity. As a consumer, all you can see is what's on the label. So it says fish oil. It must be good. Basically, that is a case of buyer beware. Because oftentimes, because fish oil is not refined correctly, will have off flavors. So many people, many manufacturers or marketers will add flavors to the fish oil to mask the off aspects that were derived by the high heat used to distill the fish oil. Now, oftentimes, if you add certain flavors, especially lemon flavors, you will now make the fish oil unsuitable for human consumption. There's a standard test that all edible oils in the world have to pass before they're considered suitable for human consumption. This is called the Totox test. It's an oxidation test. Once you add a lemon flavor to any fish oil, the Totox levels become high enough to be beyond the levels of basically be considered to be an edible oil. Oh yes, the fish oil tastes better, but will it basically be suitable for human consumption? No, by the standard Totox levels by which all edible oils in the world are traded by. But here's what the consumer can't see. They can't see the degree of isomerization of the omega-3 fatty acids. You're only guaranteed that you have the least amount of isomerization is, was it distilled by supercritical fluid technology or older technology? That you can't see in the capsule, but you can see it on the label. Because as I mentioned earlier, it's the supercritical fluid technology that removes the anti-nutrients that reduce the overall biological activity of the fish oil. And that's the reason you're taking fish oil in the first place, for its biological activity. But you also have to worry about daily intake. What's an adequate dose? Well, an adequate dose would be defined as the levels required to reduce inflammation. We have a marker that we've developed over the years and has been clinically proven over that same time period, the ratio of two fatty acids in the blood. One is called arachidonic acid, or AA, and the other is called EPA, one of the two omega-3 fatty acids. It's that ratio of arachidonic acid to EPA that determines how efficiently you're reducing inflammation in every one of your 30 trillion cells in the body. And to have the greatest efficiency, you want to keep that ratio between 1.5 and 3. And unless you're eating lots of fish, like the Japanese, who keep that's their ratio in the Japanese, you'll need to supplement your diet with omega-3 fatty acids. How much? Again, the clinical data over the last 30 years has shown conclusively you'll need a minimum of about 2.4 grams of EPA and DHA on a daily basis. I say a minimum because we're not all genetically the same. Depending on how inflamed you are or how old you are, you may need more. But the blood will tell you exactly how much you need by keeping that ratio of arachidonic acid to EPA in that range between 1.5 and 3. That's where you get your biological potency. If it's higher, basically, you're not going to reduce inflammation to that great extent. And here's another thing. Omega-3 fatty acids are rapidly cleared from the blood. Their half-life is about 2 to 3 days. Now, what does this mean? A half-life that says, if I give a dosage of the omega-3 fatty acids, how long before the blood levels drop by 1/2? So by the time you take omega-3 fatty acids, within 2 weeks, all the remaining omega-3 fatty acids that you took, you're not taking fish oil on a consistent basis, are gone from the blood. And your benefits, your long-term benefits, only come from maintaining adequate blood levels. This is no different than a drug. Drugs only work if you keep taking them on a continual basis. Fish oil is exactly the same. So you need a daily intake of at least 2.4 grams, if not more. And whatever that daily intake is to maintain your ratio of arachidonic acid to EPA between 1.5 and 3, that's the dosage you have to take for the rest of your life. Now, is it worth it? The answer is yes, as I'll try to indicate here in this lecture, because you're reducing inflammation, which is an underlying driver of chronic disease.